Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon, a 27-year veteran of the NYPD. A lot happening in the Brian Kohberger case. And it seems that every time the defense comes up with an idea of a different defense to try, the prosecution goes on offense and sort of thwarts the ideas of the defense, and specifically Ann Taylor, who is doing her best to try to give Brian Kohberger the very best representation he can get. But it seems every single time they come up with an idea, for example, saying he's unfit. He was unfit to be able to carry out physically the murders of 4 people in the time frame that he allegedly committed the murders in. However, Banfield, specifically Jennifer Kaffendaffer from News Nation, just came up with an app called Strava that shows that 2 years ago, Brian Kohberger ran a mile in 6 minutes. That certainly is not the physicality of someone who is unphysically fit. So, and when they want to talk about, he couldn't have possibly, he's not mentally capable of planning and carrying out something like this, they come out with his crime scene assignment that he assigned to his students at DeSales University a couple of years ago. So it thwarts every one of their ideas. He's mentally, physically incapable of doing this. And then the prosecution shows that, in fact, he is extremely capable of doing all those things through evidence, through documentary evidence that they can produce. So what is the defense to do? I believe Ann Taylor is trying everything. Prosecutors sharing new evidence, talking about family members in the Kohberger family of testifying, therefore not allowing them to sit inside the courtroom. Here's his 2 sisters up on the screen. Possibly his father to testify, which would preclude them being allowed inside the courtroom. Then the Balaclava here, right? That Dylan Mortensen, an eyeball witness on the early morning hours of these murders, said that the killer was wearing this. And what does the prosecution find out? That Brian Kohberger ordered one of these. So all of the evidence, all of the attempts at a defense that Brian Kohberger's defense team comes up with seems to be thwarted by the prosecution. And the trial is 5 months away. 5 months away. So the defense, I believe, needs a victory, or they are in serious trouble here. But they're just going to keep coming out with ideas. So, folks, hold on to your hats. Hold on to your loved ones. Hold on to your cup of coffee, your glass of wine. Hold on to your service dog. You're about to enter true crime from a police perspective. You're about to enter the off-the-cuff zone, the police off-the-cuff zone.
There has to be some common sense.
They were the ones who called 911 to get him help, and now they're calling for change.
And now a word from our sponsor. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for betting on all the madness. Even if your bracket is busted, BetOnline has more ways to stay in on the action with a free Sweet 16 bracket and live betting on every remaining tournament game. With the largest selection of odds on everything from college basketball to Major League Baseball, National Hockey League, and mixed martial arts, BetOnline continues to be your number one sports betting source. From every Cinderella story to every hat trick, BetOnline has you covered with odds, stats, and more for every game, every play, and every win. BetOnline, the game starts here. Mando whole body deodorant. The thing that I like most about Mando body deodorant is that it lasts all day and leaves me feeling clean and fresh. It doesn't quit even under the harshest heat and humidity. The fresh feeling keeps me dry and confident. No need to worry about unsightly sweat stains. Mando's starter pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with a solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice like mini body wash and deodorant wipes, and free shipping. As a special offer for listeners, new customers get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code. That equates to over 40% off your starter pack. Use code POLICE, police in capital letters, at shopmando.com. That's shopmando.com. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Smell fresher, stay drier, and boost your confidence from head to toe with Mando. So, this case, again, in the last few days, or you may say a few weeks, a lot of new evidence has been presented by the prosecution. And everyone going along that's been following this case, let's not forget, it's 2.5 years. November 13th, 2022. So many people following this case, because of the gag order, did not get a chance to see or hear about much of the evidence that the prosecution had. So all of those things are now coming out. No more gag order. So some of the evidence that we hear about is a surprise. Let me play this from ABC News.
Yeah, Rebecca, good morning to you. So that new evidence is helping prosecutors hone in on the former PhD student's classwork, specifically his crime scene scenario final. But Brian Kohberger's lawyers say that early in his education, he was treated as a child with special needs. But now, with just a few months until trial, it's all under the microscope.
This morning, prosecutors in the Idaho college murders case saying Brian Kohberger's homework could play a crucial role in the trial. In a new filing, prosecutors say the alleged killer turned in what amounts to be a crime scene how-to guide as part of a homework assignment in 2020. Some of the details mirroring the Idaho college murder scene.
Prosecution is trying to make the argument that this information plays somewhat of a playbook for not leaving evidence behind a crime scene.
The 12-page crime scene scenario final from his time at DeSales University, detailing how an investigating officer would process a scene where a deceased white female had been found, including the use of protective clothing to avoid contaminating the scene or leaving fingerprints. While Kohberger's lawyers say he is innocent and argue he has a developmental disability that prevents him from having the speed and coordination to carry out the murders, prosecutors point to purchases he made, including a balaclava, a type of ski mask that covers the head but not the eyes. They say he bought it in January of 2022. Prosecutors sharing this never-before-seen image drawn by the surviving roommate in the days after the murders, showing what they say appears to be that kind of mask. She told authorities the man behind the mask that she saw in the house that night had bushy eyebrows. And another purchase in the spotlight, a K-bar knife and sheath bought on the Amazon account Kohberger used, similar to the knife and sheath seen in this image from the Amazon website. But the defense arguing that anyone from the suspect's family could have made the purchase from that Amazon account.
Well, prosecutors also say they can provide testimony from witnesses with knowledge that Kohberger is the one who purchased the knife. The murder weapon has never been found, and prosecutors also say that Kohberger searched Amazon for a replacement knife after the murders.
So, that evidence is extremely powerful, and for several reasons, all right? When they're talking about he doesn't have the mental capacity to plan, carry out knowledge, intellectual capacity to plan these murders and to get away with these murders, a 12-page document was written by him for a college class for their assignment. And he spoke about things like Locard's theory of exchange, Locard's principle of exchange, That's the principle where a human being goes into a crime scene. They bring something from the outside in with them. And just on the basis of going into that crime scene, upon leaving, they take something from the crime scene with them. And that's called contamination. So it's so important to keep the scene as pristine as possible. And that's what one of the things Kohberger writes about in his 12-page assignment. How involved do you think and how organized do you think you have to be to understand crime scenes and this a female victim and a male going in and out of a crime scene, or a student to process this crime scene without contaminating it? That's not the work of someone who's dyslexic or someone who has ADHD. That's someone who is extremely organized and understands what needs to be done in a crime scene to keep it pristine, how to process it without the processor becoming part of that crime scene. And that's some of the things that Brian Kohberger wrote about, right? He wrote about how to keep this crime scene pristine in order to process it and not to become part and contaminate the crime scene. So it seems that every defensive suggestion that his defense team, led by Ann Taylor, brings up, that the prosecution somehow thwarts that with more evidence. Here's the thumbnail of him taking a selfie on the morning of the murders.
He pulled from a phone, a K-bar knife bought on Amazon, and a sketch of a mask. Those are just some of the big revelations in the case against Brian Kohberger. I have the biggest bombshells dropped by the state and the defense. Plus, will prosecutors actually call Brian Kohberger's family to testify against him?
So important that the evidence of right here of the Balaclava, which they have evidence that he ordered, and the sketch drawn by Dylan Mortensen of that Balaclava, such powerful evidence. And that is some of the evidence that is going against him now. And of course, the defense will try to say that Dylan Mortensen is unreliable because she was intoxicated. She cannot identify the perpetrator except for the fact that she suggested that the perpetrator in this case had bushy eyebrows. And when we pull up this picture of Brian Kohberger, the selfie that he took on the morning of the murders, the prosecution will let the jury decide whether or not those are in fact bushy eyebrows. And, what do we think here? Are they bushy eyebrows or are they not bushy eyebrows? And that, again, will be decided. I think that you can look at this and say, wow, yeah, it looks like it's bushy eyebrows to me, And of course, the most important evidence is right there, is that K-bar knife that they now have the Amazon account that it was ordered from. And of course, the knife sheath that was left behind. And on the button of the knife sheath was Brian Kohberger's touch DNA. So powerful of evidence. And then we have just the brand new in the last 12 or 14 hours, evidence from News Nation. Ashley Banfield with Kaffendorfer, a former FBI agent, Kaffendorfer, who discovered that 2 years ago, based on a Strava app, that Brian Kohberger had run a 6-minute mile That is extremely fast for a regular amateur, or for someone who's pretty much an everyday runner to run a 6-minute mile. So let's listen to Jennifer Kaffendorfer on News Nation with Ashley Banfield in regards to this new finding that, again, thwarts the whole premise that the defense is raising, that he's not physically capable of doing this.
The right way. Because you were onto this 2 years ago, before we knew about this developmental disorder and challenges to his speed and agility. 2 years ago, as a runner, you checked the Strava app to see if he was on it, and you found that he was.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me, Ashley. You know, when you look at somebody who's capable of killing 4 people in such a small amount of time, you're going to want to know, is this person physically fit enough to do this type of murder? And when I saw this on Strava, I got the picture of somebody that not only is very coordinated, but also very fast.
So let's talk about that. You spotted his times. I saw 6 minutes-ish. Did you see like under 6 minutes? And tell me what that, like, you went through the training with the FBI. Your top agents, could they run that?
So Ashley, at the end of training school and in the middle and at the beginning, we're timed in a 2-mile run. And for a male to receive the top number, which was a perfect 10, he had to run 6-minute miles, a 12-minute 2-mile. So this is pretty quick. It's pretty fast. No, it's not Olympic time. It's not in the 4s or 5s, but it's fast. And for a recreational runner, it's quite an accolade to be able to run that fast.
So talk to me about, okay, so we know that his app had him running, you know, faster than the average bear, but what about the routes themselves and what a normal runner records on their Strava and why they record certain routes?
Well, I found this interesting because he's sort of weaving out, as you can see, some of these some of these housing areas and developments and by them. And you just wonder, was he in training for what he anticipated doing? Understanding that you would need to be in this kind of a shape. In addition, Strava can provide such other important information. You might remember the Mo Wilson case where this was used. Her killer actually tracked her and found out where she was. So this is an app that can be used to figure out where people were. And so I thought law enforcement might use that in case Kaylee or Maddie or Xana, anybody might have used that and been part of that as well.
So super fascinating that his patterns had him going up cul-de-sacs and back streets, because I started to wonder if maybe he was casing houses or looking, if he's guilty of this, was he casing houses or looking for targets before he came upon 1122 King Road? Because I think you found that much of his running was happening very late at night, like around midnight.
Right. The running that we saw was at 12:45 at night, and this was back in August. And so I believe he could have still been looking for whatever target. Again, if he committed this crime, it would be very interesting for him to be able to case in this way and look and surveil and possibly pick out a target.
The other issue is with the defense saying that he doesn't lack the speed or agility to pull off this kind of a crime. You discovered the kinds of surfaces that he was running on and the kind of agility that you would need to run in Pullman, Washington, and the places he was running.
Right, absolutely, Ashley. This was through these areas where you're going to have curves, you're going to have a change in elevation from a sidewalk, say, down to the road. You're going to have different roadside surfaces, asphalt and such. And so these aren't areas that are necessarily very easy to maneuver when you're running through these types of areas. So that also tells me the agility that would be involved as opposed to, say, a track.
One last question about his running, and that is the set of, the routes that he ran. He didn't have a set of routes. And I think that you explained it best by suggesting runners typically want to better their times or best their times, and they often do the same kinds of routes. Not so for Kohberger.
Yeah, typically you want to run a very set pattern and distance. So if you're improving, so that where you're running is safe to run. I mean, I found the fact that he was running at 12:45 at night very unique for a runner because it is so very dark, certainly in Washington as well. In other words, that less lit areas. And so actually it puts a runner in danger. So typically you run those paths that are safe and that don't deviate.
Thanks for watching.
Very, very interesting. And one of the things I think, and I mentioned this earlier, is that this totally destroys the whole premise of the defense saying that he wasn't capable of doing this crime because he wasn't in that good of physical condition. A 6-minute mile is pretty damn good. And as Kaffendorfer said, Jennifer Kaffendorfer, it's not an Olympic time, but it's a really respectable time. A 6-minute mile is respectable. And for sort of an amateur runner, I think that's almost in the elite level, running 6, maybe under 6, to around 5 would be elite. Between 5 and 6, but 6 is really a respectable time. So now the defense, really, you're saying he's not in shape to do the crime that he committed? I think that's really not true. I think that he's in really good shape. He's in actually excellent shape, and he's probably more in the shape of a runner than a bodybuilder because he's 5'10", 5'11", 185 pounds. So that's more of like a runner. It's not like a bodybuilder. Maybe he's not even that heavy. Maybe he's 165, 170. But there's no doubt he is in the type of shape that he could absolutely have committed this crime.
Prosecutors offering new revelations this morning about some of the evidence they plan to use against Brian Kohberger, the man they believe killed 4 University of Idaho students in 2022.
State v. Kohberger.
This is the type of black mask or balaclava prosecutors say Kohberger purchased 10 months before the murders of Madison Mogen, Kaylee Gonsalves, Ethan Chapin, and Xana Kernodle. The same type of mask, they say, a surviving roommate told police she saw on an unknown man in the home the night of the murders, even drawing her own sketch for authorities.
She described seeing someone wearing all black, a mask with only a portion of their face showing.
A judge entered a not guilty plea for Kohberger, who has maintained his innocence heading into trial this summer, while his legal team appears poised to keep him off the witness stand, arguing Kohberger's autism, including his, quote, intense gaze, awkward body posture, and inability to show emotion, could sway a jury to wrongfully convict. His attorney is also offering new details in court papers, saying after a SWAT team arrested Kohberger at his parents' Pennsylvania home, he did not perceive the profoundly serious nature of the moment, apparently making small talk with the detective during the car ride to the police station, and even suggesting they, quote, get a coffee at a later date. Kohberger's defense adding as a child he was treated for special needs, and that his ability to testify in trial and the decision to testify will be nearly impossible. The state firing back with new evidence, with prosecutors trying to show, quote, his knowledge of crime scenes, including Kohberger's college records, where he studied criminal justice. In a final class paper, Kohberger allegedly detailing the steps he would take as an investigator, approaching a crime scene with a deceased white female. The suspected weapon in his hypothetical case, a knife. The father of victim Kaylee Gonsalves speaking out.
He is a smart guy. Figured he'd have some better way to explain what he was doing that night, but he didn't.
I mean, the question always is whether a defendant takes the stand. It seems like the defense is already saying that's not going to happen.
Yeah, I don't think that's on the table, a realistic possibility in this case. I think instead, the defense wants to be able to say in opening statements, look, jury, you might see some atypical behaviors here. And so they sort of want to preview and set the stage sort of to manage their expectations going to trial. But I don't know that the judge is going to go for that. That could sort of confuse the issues, and the prosecution's pushing back really hard on it.
They will.
There, in almost, I would say 95 to 99% of the time, a defendant in a murder case never takes the stand. So, even the fact that the defense is arguing this to try to get sympathy from the court, I don't think they have any intention, or in almost, as I said, in 99% of murder cases, would they have any intention of having the defendant go on the stand? That is really just like a Hail Mary pass when everything else has failed, to go and put the defendant on the stand, because it's just not it's not something that is done, and because it's then the prosecution, of course, gets to cross-examine the defendant, and that's the defendant becomes a huge target, and he can look totally inept, and can look like a liar, and he can look guilty by testifying on his own behalf. But let's keep in mind that the defendant always has the right to testify on his own behalf. This is about his Amazon buy, also from News Nation.
That his developmental coordination disorder makes it impossible for Kohberger to be able to slash 4 people to death in such a short period of time. And the state has an answer for that. That a doctor says Brian's condition was a thing of the past, something that hasn't affected him for many, many years. And whatever he's got left is like the fine motor skills, little things, not big things. I could go on, believe me, but I'm going to stop here and bring in the best resource I can think of in this story, and that is our own Brian Enton. Okay, Brian, let's start with the Balaclava. Again, I couldn't believe it. Today, documents showing that they have the receipts. The state has the receipts for the black Balaclava from Dick's Sporting Goods. However, if I'm the defense, I'll say this is Idaho. It is freezing in Idaho, and lots of people wear these balaclavas. Oh, and P.S., he bought it in January, in winter in Pennsylvania. I guess that makes sense, but it's really going to have to be add this to the mountain of evidence and see how the jury feels about it.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's a good point that the defense likely will make. There was another just mountain of documents that were released late today that you mentioned that we're still going through. Reading the footnotes, a lot of these new nuggets, these bombshell nuggets, are sort of buried in the documents, including this latest about the balaclava, which, by the way, just to be honest, I didn't even know what a balaclava was. At first, I was thinking baklava, like the Greek food, but no, it is a mask. You see it on your screen. That's what it looks like. It's similar to like something that we would wear skiing or that you'd wear on a very, very cold day. And the state got all of the records, got all of the shopping records, has the receipt from Dick's Sporting Goods, and says that Brian Kohberger bought that on January 10th, 2022, 11 months before the murders. You mentioned it. He was still living in Pennsylvania, and that they plan to bring this in during the trial, Ashley.
Very, very, very powerful evidence, right? They can prove he bought it. Dylan Mortensen made a sketch of it, that they have the sketch in evidence. And we'll add all of these things together, and it seems like the defense really at some point now needs a win, because they've been getting shut out in the last few weeks. And we, the audience, or the content creators, the investigators, the YouTube community, the true crime community that have been following this case, it's sort of coming together, and there's more people now, I think, that actually believe that they have the right guy, whereas earlier on there was a whole huge community of folks. And it doesn't matter what the community thinks. The only thing that matters is what the 12 jurors in the box think, whether they vote guilty or not guilty. And again, Brian Kohberger is presumed innocent until proven guilty by a court of law. So, folks, that's the case, and it's really exciting about all the new evidence that's coming forth. We're going to bring you new evidence, new happenings in this case as they come forth. Until then, I'm Bill Cannon from Police Off the Cuff. Have a great day, everyone, and God bless you.
One episode just ain't enough.